Hi everyone, William here. I was just thinking today how much I look forward every day to doing this. So thank you for watching. I feel like I know you, although I don't know that I know any of you. But we're joined in this sort of journey of discovery as I see it, both about Dmitri and history and what we can learn from Dmitri's experience, which we're getting very intimately in the case of the diary entries, and also today's material from 1936. I should have said at the beginning, this is the Grand Duke Dmitri Diaries series. Well, not just diaries, and we are in 1936 today. No, that doesn't sound good. My dog has a bad cough. He's very old, so he's on steroids, but he's not doing great. All right, our recap for 1915. We had just a day of recuperation with the doctors coming and the family being his immediate family, father, stepmother, brother, sister. Okay, in 1936, continuing on with the young Russian speech, Dmitri was really rattled by the extent to which people were questioning his right to be involved in any kind of political party or movement, and also to the extent that young Russia was really regarded as and being called out for its sort of fellow traveler status with the Soviets. So they were accused, as Dmitri says, of being conciliators, seduced by the revolution, and I'm sure at that time, as now, there's a lot of question as to whether Kazembek was working for the Kremlin. And yeah, okay, so our cast today, well, we just have Kirill, and we have a nice long quote from him. So here we go. This is Dmitri standing before his fellow party members. My friend is the man who does not desire to infringe on the inviolability of my motherland. I'm not interested in disputes within the emigration. When necessary, I am able to meet with people who are involved in the most diverse levels of political activity in their countries, going all the way up to those who wield the greatest influence. In all my interactions with them, I always keep one thing in mind, the one thing in mind that is most important to me, the inviolability and independence of our country. None of us should ever forget the words of the head of the Russian imperial house. No matter how deluded, this is Kirill, no matter how deluded the Russian masses may yet be, I can by no means take the standpoint of those leaders who would willingly yield to the temptation of going to war with their countrymen, relying on foreign bayonets. Under the banner of fighting the Bolsheviks, these leaders will bring about the enslavement of our fatherland, the ruin of its national identity, the plundering of its natural resources, and perhaps even the loss of yet more regions, pushing it back from access to the sea. End quote. These words were spoken in an address to the Russian people on 1st January 1925, 11 years ago. I have nothing to say to those of my countrymen who, for the sake of their self-serving, narrow, and false convictions, are ready to sacrifice the dignity of our fatherland, who, for the sake of regaining their estates, are ready to sacrifice the well-being of Russia itself. Just making a note on the word dignity. The psychology of the Russian emigre has been changing lately, which explains the increasing success of the Young Russia movement. Here abroad, the bias on which the emigre politics of the representatives of the old debunked parties was based is beginning to disappear. Our adherence to historical traditional monarchism not only does not prevent us from taking the real Russian situation into account and basing our plans on domestic reality, but on the contrary, encourages us to do so. Monarchism is a perpetual creative force, constantly renewing life, organizing progress, and by no means hindering it. Monarchy is found in every epoch. Its forms can and must change, but its spirit and content remain unchanged, since the idea of monarchy is supratemporal, as is its historical role. Some people, in the name of the supra-party character of the monarchical supreme power, tend to challenge my right to take an active part in the political struggle. That objection is based on an obvious misunderstanding. There's a very great difference between the rights of a member of the dynasty and the functions of monarchical power. Moreover, at present, the Russian dynasty does not exercise power. The struggle for the establishment of a monarchical power capable of being a supra-party, supranational arbiter in the life of the nation is precisely a political struggle. And no Russian has the right to shirk his duty to participate in this struggle, the outcome of which will determine the fate of our fatherland. The Young Russia Party was created to see this struggle through to a victorious end, and I joined the party in full consciousness of the rightness of my choice. Okay, wow, don't we all wish that one of these speeches was recorded on film with audio? I would love to see what kind of a speaker Dmitri was. If he was, succeeding in getting people wound up, or if not. And I've never heard his voice, so hopefully something like that will emerge at some point. All right, so this is really a culmination of how Dmitri had always conceived of his role in relation to Russia. So for some people, it was military. It was on the battlefield. And he never excelled at that. So this is his battlefield, essentially. And I think he's in his element. Although he doesn't he's a little thin-skinned, he's sensitive when it comes to the criticism. Okay, so this, I think, is the reason why he, in 1939, when Grunwald was writing this letter to Maria and criticizing him for not paying any attention to the emigres anymore, and for, wanting to be involved with British political leaders, with Churchill and, other people, and ignoring emigre politics. Well, this probably explains it, He just felt from the 1921 incident to this incident, he just felt that he couldn't do anything right in the eyes of the emigres. And so, to me, this explains a lot. It's ironic, isn't it? Now talking about the quote from Kirill, that if that was really how Kirill felt, and I don't have any reason to doubt that it was, then how could Vladimir have gone so far against his father's convictions and wishes by, considering this idea, being tempted by this idea of Nazi Germany to set him up as a puppet king of the Ukraine? That was the kind of thinking that came more from his mother than his father. And I wonder if there was any tension in that marriage over that issue, because Ducky was so pro-German, and she was so much more kind of forceful than Kirill was. And so I would love to know that. If any of you, I guess I've never met anyone who is an expert on Kirill, but if such a person exists and any of you know him or her, please let me know. I would love to talk to that person. That would be fantastic. It makes me smile too that at the end of Kirill's quote, he says that Russia is being pushed back from access to the sea. And that's so typical of a Navy man, right? Kirill was a naval officer. And so, of course, he's going to, he's going to think of that, whereas other people wouldn't. That wouldn't be something that they immediately thought of. So Dmitri tells us these words were spoken in 1925. Young Russia existed in 1925, but Dmitri points out that it was an address to the Russian people. So it wasn't an address to young Russia, and that raises the question in my mind as to how he expected this address to the Russian people to reach them. I mean, was it on, 1925, you didn't really have people listening to the radio. So it wouldn't have been a sort of illicit radio broadcast. Maybe he tried to get it printed and get it into the country. I don't know. It's interesting here again, too, that Dmitri is referring to him as the head of the Russian imperial house instead of the sovereign emperor. And that would not, I think, have gone over well in Russia to call him the sovereign emperor. So maybe they were hoping that the Russian people were somehow finding out about this stuff, and also that the members of the emigration who weren't completely on board with Kirill being the sovereign emperor, maybe this would appeal to them a little. So yeah, an address to the Russian people. Okay. What do we have next? Okay, this accusation that Dmitri makes, that one of the reasons that these people who have self-serving, narrow, and false convictions in relation to Russia are ready to sacrifice Russia's dignity, by seeing it occupied, by seeing it knocked down from its great power status, that one of the reasons they're doing this is because they want their property back. And, I guess if Germany successfully invaded Russia, then Germany would perhaps restore their estates to them. So if that is true, then of course it is not something that I respect, that would be their basic orientation. And just a quick note that throughout Dmitri and throughout his other speech, he's alternating between motherland and fatherland. Motherland was certainly the more authentic designation for Russians. Fatherland more belongs to the fascist movement. That appeals to people who like the sort of authoritarian kind of scenario, even if it's not fascist. The young Russians weren't fascists. They just like to to cover themselves with the trappings of that. All right, and then he speaks about the psychology of the Russian immigrants. Was Dmitri an aficionado of psychology? This is not the first time he's spoken about psychology in relation to, earlier it was in relation to the Russian people. Now it's in relation to the Russian emigres. So I think he must have been at least passingly familiar to him. A lot of times people who are interested in the kind of occult things that he was interested in are also interested in psychology, but something like New Thought or New Age would pretty much go against conventional psychology. But I would love to know, what he knew about psychology and what psychologists, did he like Jung? Did he like Freud? Did he go that far? I don't know. But honestly, the most fascinating thing about this is this really interesting idea, and I don't know if it came from Dmitri himself. I think he's fully on board with it. Is this idea of monarchy as a creative force, as perpetual motion, progress, even the renewal of life. I mean, that's mystical for sure, but it's certainly a different understanding of monarchy than, say, the political one, or even just the divine right of kings, or perpetual motion, creative force. I think those things were important to Dmitri. Even if he didn't come up with those terms, I think that would have appealed to him very much. He was always forward-looking, and throughout these speeches, he's really wanted to emphasize that. And it was a good way for young Russia to sort of say, oh, no, we're not communists or monarchists, but we see monarchy as a creative force. So something that can take some of the ideas that the Soviets have and work with them creatively. And the funny thing is that in my dissertation, which I finished and received my PhD in 2000, that was something I talked about a lot, not ever having read this speech, about the idea that in Russia, you didn't have politics until very late and in a sort of not too serious way, because rather than simply being the divine right of kings, it was this idea of a creative force, that there's something divine in the creative, and that the way that spark of divinity was supposed to play out in a monarch was as a creative force, and he had the exclusive prerogative to be creative. So other people were shut out, even at the level of ideas, from being involved in the body politic or civil society in any meaningful way. Anyway, this is so interesting that Dmitri uses those words, whether he came up with them or not, because those words to me are implicit in the Orthodox understanding of monarchy. But how often did they actually play out in Russia? Well, with Peter the Great, with Alexander II, through his brother Constantine. We've talked about this before, but in most instances, the Tsars wanted to see autocracy as kind of frozen, not motion at all. If motion, then motion backwards, repressing anything new and modern. All right. Once again, an assertion of my right. It's my right to do this. It's my right because there's a separateness between what was I going to say? Between the function of a monarchy and the rights of the dynasty, the functions of a ruling monarchy and the rights of a member of the dynasty outside of that milieu of a ruling monarchy. Well, okay, this is a very interesting equation on Dmitri's part of taking away. Monarchy usually rests on the military, right? I mean, even to this day, you see members of the British royal family in the trappings of military uniforms, chests full of medals. And what has the king ever done in relation to military service? But the military has really been, aside from this mystical sort of divine right of kings, the military has really been the sort of justification for monarchy, or if not the justification, it's the sort of legitimate presentation of monarchy. And it's very interesting that Dmitri is switching from that to politics. And as I said before, that politics were his battlefield. That's how he saw things, and I find that extremely interesting. All right, so what do we have next time? When we return to 1936, we're going to have Dmitri addressing some of the specific allegations about young Russia being hand in glove with the Kremlin. And in the next video, when we go back to 1915, we'll have Felix Yusupov, the younger, showing up and seeing how Dmitri is reacting to him as of February 1915, so long before there was any Rasputin conspiracy. So yes, I hope you will come back, and I'll see you then. Bye.